You're watching Shot Recap, and this is from hell. A mysterious killer is ripping out the internal organs of sex workers to perform a Masonic ritual.
You fucking cunts down. You and your fucking brother.
The story begins in an opium den, where our main character, Scotland Yard Inspector Aberline, is lost in his destructive habit. In 1888 London, opium dens were all the rage. The sky over the capital of the British Empire is blood red. On the cobblestone streets of Whitechapel, one of the city's grimiest districts, life is in full swing. Her Majesty's subjects live with pride for their nation. Painted-up hookers stand their ground like soldiers, scanning the crowd for clients with sharp eyes. A red-headed sex worker named Mary Kelly slips into an alleyway, only to be stopped by two thugs. The girl owes money for protection. In the morning, the sex workers doll themselves up for another day on the grind when Anne Crook, a former co-worker, shows up and asks Mary to watch her baby, the result of an unfortunate workplace accident. In return, she promises to get the rest of the money from her husband, who just got back from a successful business trip. But just as he returns, a group of thugs bursts into the room and kidnaps both Anne and her husband right in front of the courtesans. Anne is tortured, while Mary and her friend tremble in fear, holding the baby tight. Mary decides to take the baby to Anne Crook's mother. As soon as she leaves, the hooker left behind gets dragged into a dark alley by someone lurking in the shadows. A blade flashes in the dark, growing redder with every strike. The story cuts back to the opium den. The inspector, not yet worthy of the rank of captain, is sprawled out, pupils wide, lost in an altered state of mind. He's yanked out of his drug haze by Sergeant Godley, his partner in the rough world of detective work. Turns out, in his opium-fueled trance, the inspector shows signs of clairvoyance. He saw the murder of the sex worker. He and his partner head to the morgue to examine the body. The killer had cut out the victim's source of income. At the hospital, Sir William Gull, the royal family's personal physician, watches a surgery in the anatomy theater alongside his colleagues. The procedure is performed by a rising star in medicine, Dr. Farrell. The patient is none other than then-kidnapped Anne Crook. They perform a lobotomy on her. Meanwhile, her former companions are talking over their options. They've got no money. The enforcers will come collecting soon, and one of their girls got slashed last night. One of the women gets cornered by a thug who threatens her with a knife. A nearby constable scares him off, and the shaken hooker ends up sitting in a carriage with a new client. But the man turns out to be the very same killer. After strangling the woman, the killer leaves her mutilated body lying in the street. A bobby on patrol finds the corpse. By morning, a crowd of gawkers has gathered at the crime scene. Aberline has to push through the curious onlookers. He notices the victim's clothes are completely dry, despite the rain overnight, meaning she was brought there in a covered carriage. He also finds a small sprig of grapes, something no street girl could afford. At the morgue, the inspector admits this isn't the work of an ordinary criminal. The killer is brutal, but there's method behind the madness. During a briefing, Aberline shares his findings with the other officers. They need to question every butcher in the district. These guys know how to carve up bodies and remove organs. But he also suspects the killer might be a doctor, someone who's used to digging through human guts. Once again, the sky over London turns blood red. The sunset carries a creeping dread that grows in the shadows, and the newspapers are more than happy to fan the flames. The press goes wild, throwing colorful language all over the story. Public unrest is on the verge of turning into full-blown riots. Turns out, smashing Jewish-owned shops wasn't just a 20th century German pastime. Looking for inspiration, Aberline downs a mix of opium tincture and absinthe. But instead of a vision of the serial killer, he's hit with a memory of his wife, who died in childbirth 2 years ago. The next morning, the inspector and Sergeant Godley attend the murdered girl's funeral. They hope to speak with her fellow sex workers, but the women aren't exactly eager to talk to the cops. Later, the girls argue about Anne Crook's disappearance. Should they sell the story to the papers or report it to the police? The argument is cut short by their landlord, who throws them out. Meanwhile, the killer is getting ready for another night on the hunt. His dinner, his home, his clothes, and his surgical tools all point to one thing: this man's got serious money. Outside, a carriage is waiting. The coachman, given orders, sets out to find a sex worker who needs to be delivered to a specific address. There, like the other victims, she's murdered. The inspector examines the latest crime scene, Constables nearby have found a piece of a leather apron, the kind butchers usually wear. In the victim's hand lies a grapevine branch. Aberline concludes the killer is following some kind of ritual. Unable to identify the culprit right away, he seeks advice from a surgeon. Aberline visits a London hospital where scientists are showing off a patient with elephantiasis to raise funds. The inspector approaches Dr. Farrell, the city's best young surgeon, and asks him to act as an expert. Farrell refuses, doubting that an educated man could be behind the murders. He thinks it's more likely the work of immigrant newcomers. Their conversation is overheard by Sir William Gull, a keen connoisseur of alien parasites and stolen jewelry, who generously offers his help. During the examination, the seasoned doctor diagnoses Aberline with drug addiction. To help him overcome it, the doctor prescribes a tonic. The royal physician also says that an autopsy requires not just one scalpel, but a full set usually carried in a surgical bag. He confirms the detective's suspicion that the killer is well versed in anatomy. Later, at Buckingham Palace, Dr. Gull discusses with the Queen the worsening illness of her grandson Prince Albert. Using his insights, Aberline instructs the constables where to expect the next murder. He tells them to watch not only butchers and Jews, but also well-dressed gentlemen. He suspects the Ripper comes from high society. Meanwhile, the coachman, the killer's accomplice, talks nervously with his master, worried about finding 3 more victims. Sergeant Godley catches Mary Kelly on the street. The inspector wants to speak with her. They head to a tavern, where Aberline asks if she's noticed anything suspicious. Mary tells him about Anne Crook's kidnapping. From her description, the sergeant recognizes Ben Kindley, head of a special police unit. Aberline goes to visit him. Ben Kindley isn't at his office, but, using his natural charm and a bit of boldness, the inspector sneaks into his office while Godley keeps watch. Inside, he finds files on Anne Crook and her baby, missing along with the grandmother. The search is almost interrupted when Kindley returns, but Sergeant Godley stops him by staging a fake terrorist incident, pretending to be an Irish independence fighter. Taking advantage of the chaos, Aberline slips away, but Kindley quickly realizes someone has been snooping through his office, asking about the ex-sex worker. The inspector and Mary Kelly go to the poorhouse where the lobotomized Anne Crook is kept. After the operation, Anne can no longer hold a coherent conversation. Aberline asks about the baby's father. The woman keeps repeating, "He's a prince, he's a prince." Later, Mary Kelly says she witnessed the wedding of her friend and some wealthy artist. Aberline reveals that the special police unit secretly placed the baby in the orphanage as a foundling. The inspector takes the fallen woman to an art gallery displaying portraits of the royal family. One painting shows Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's grandson. Mary Kelly recognizes in him Anne Crook's secret husband. Aberline visits Sir William Gull. He discusses the theory that the prince is the Ripper, trying to cover his shame by marrying a low-class woman. But the doctor reveals the truth. Albert has syphilis, and the disease has progressed so far that his trembling hands make surgical precision impossible. Besides, the heir knows nothing about anatomy. Ben Kindley, head of the special unit, attends a Masonic lodge meeting where Aberline's direct superior is also present. The Masons initiate a new member, Dr. Farrell. They decide to mislead the investigation by sending the inspector letters supposedly from the killer. But Aberline sees right through the forgeries. Soon after, a package arrives containing half of a human kidney. The public demands police action, so Aberline orders the arrest of the sex workers' protection racket. He gives the women money to clear the streets for a couple of days. A spark of attraction grows between him and Mary Kelly. The inspector learns that Ben Kindley was once a surgeon's assistant before joining the special unit. Aberline suspects Kindley is covering up the royal family's shame that a legitimate child born to a low-class sex worker is the rightful heir, a secret that could shake the British Empire. And Anne Crook's colleagues are just unwanted witnesses. Meanwhile, Mary Kelly's friend, out at a tavern, runs into the killer. Mistaking him for a client, she follows him into an alley, but then spots the glint of a knife in the dark. She manages to escape, but the coachman catches her. They only slit her throat, fearing a random witness might call the cops. That same night, the Ripper strikes again, killing another prostitute who had left the shelter. He also leaves a chalk message on the wall, hoping to throw off the investigation and stir up anti-Jewish riots. Aberline is pressured by mysterious figures who bluntly suggest he should name a scapegoat instead of digging for the truth. Otherwise, someone else will start investigating the inspector's own mysterious disappearance. But once he pulls himself together, he heads back to the crime scene, where he sees a message written with such skill only someone from high society could write it. The police chief shows shows up and orders the evidence to be washed away, ignoring Aberline's protests, and removes him from the investigation, packing his things, handing Mary Kelly, the last living witness to the wedding, a message, and money to leave town. Aberline goes back to the opium den to expand his mind. He's haunted by visions tied to the mysterious killer. After receiving a cosmic signal, the retired inspector heads to the library to study the history of the Masonic Order. While he reads, Mary Kelly tracks down the coachman. Aberline returns to Sir William Gull to share his suspicions the Masons are behind the murders. The inspector believes Sir Gull is the Mason, carrying out the order and covering up the royal court's secret. But the organ removals are the doctor's personal revenge on the sex workers who infected the prince, his lifelong patient, with a deadly disease. When the doctor admits this, Aberline tries to kill him, but Kindley sneaks up and knocks the inspector out with a blow to the back of the head. William Gull heads to the lodging house, where the final victim awaits. Bound and captive, Aberline is being driven in a carriage by Kindley and Dr. Forel, who plan to kill him, but the inspector manages to break free by overturning the carriage, killing his captors in the process. He races to Mary Kelly's place to save her, but the killer is already sitting on her bed. Soon, the murderer gets to work in a bloody ritual. After cutting out the last victim's heart, he throws it into a kettle and sets it on the fire. In his twisted fantasies, the bloodied doctor imagines his colleagues applauding him. Aberline arrives late. A crowd of onlookers and police block the way near the lodging house. The sergeant hesitates before letting him in. Even the police chief is shocked by Sir Gull's rampage. He announces that Aberline will be reinstated and the doctor will be taken down. The chief leaves, leaving the inspector to watch the crime scene investigators at work. While they record the details, Aberline finds a lock of hair on the mutilated body hair that doesn't match Mary Kelly's red curls. At the tavern, the inspector receives a message. Mary Kelly left earlier, taking Anne Crook's baby from the orphanage and leaving a new address. In her place is a new sex worker who started just the day before and hasn't been seen around yet. The Queen is informed that all evidence has been successfully concealed and the witnesses eliminated. Sir William Gull stands before the Masonic Order. He will be judged by his peers, but the London Ripper declares that no one present is his equal. What he has done will go down in history. Still, the old man is sentenced to a lobotomy, and Inspector Aberline watches the procedure. Soon after, once the special unit stops watching him, Sergeant Godley convinces Aberline to go to Mary Kelly, but Aberline knows that if the Masons find out the last witness is alive, they won't hesitate to erase this little mistake. To prevent that, he burns the letter with her address. The final scenes flash images of a small Irish village where Mary Kelly raises the daughter of fallen woman Anne Crook and the heir to the throne, Prince Albert. These scenes turn out to be visions of Aberline, high on opium. When Sergeant Godley arrives at the den to wake him, he finds the inspector dead, holding 2 coins payment for Charon, and that's where the film ends.